Well, hey there, folks. This is Dr. Andrew Franklin, and in this presentation, I'll be talking about cyber learning ethical considerations. In particular, the agenda will consist of defining cyber learning. We'll also spend a great deal of time talking about the importance of informed consent within cyber learning research. And then finally, I'll wrap up the conversation by talking about ethical issues that are inherent as technology becomes a part of our extended mental processes. Cyber learning involves the convergence of psychology, education, learning technologies, computer science, engineering, and information science. Cyber learning programs have been developed by the National Science Foundation to fund exploratory and synergistic projects that emphasize learning across all age groups. There are real ethical issues inherent in brain based cyber learning research and practice. There's also tremendous potential for positive and negative change to our understanding of learner personhood, free will, conscious experience, and relatedness to others, but that potential must be embraced ethically. Ethical research with children is of real importance to cyber psychologists, given that they work with both children and family within that type of context. Two prevalent issues deal with the need to obtain informed consent and the need to protect the information of the respondents. In regard to informed consent, some researchers elect to just get consent of the parents, while others seek to get consent from both parent and child, given that many children are capable of making informed decisions. Many researchers, including your narrator, think it best to seek consent from both parties as expressed in APA ethical guidelines. As for protection of the respondents, it's important that children are afforded the same confidentiality that adults would have, and they also have the opportunity to withdraw from the study if they choose to do so. Ethics in educational technology is really important to address because 1 in 3 internet users are children. That is more than 2 billion children. And most of them have their information logged when they use educational technologies in school. Addressing ethics in educational technology is difficult because most of education technologists may have had one course that addresses ethics that is laden with terminology more consistent with the health profession, though they do include some of the core principles identified by Beauchamp and Childress in 2013. The Association for Educational Communications and Technology has defined ethical research and practice as the study and practice of facilitating learning and improving performance by creating, using, and managing technological process and resources. Michael Specter at the University of Texas has gone as far as to develop an educratic oath and subsequently a framework that takes into consideration key ethical principles. For example, acting in an evidence based manner and respecting individual rights, in addition to focusing on people, values, and different contexts. Given that there is a huge surge of literature highlighting the human brain's neural mechanism connection to the internet, it makes sense for researchers to consider cyber learning from a neuroscientific approach. A cyber learning approach will be interested in both the ways in which an educator and student make use of devices and neurocognitive processes, make use of motivations, intentions, behavioral outcomes, and a cyber learning approach will look at the effects of online and offline use of technology. Key neuroeducational themes for a brain-based cyber learning approach goes beyond just improving, explaining, and analyzing teaching. A big focus is on elucidating the ways in which students learn and then applying that information to the classroom. A goal dealing with understanding how students learn requires an interdisciplinary approach that involves many perspectives and areas, for example, psychology, neuroscience, and education. From a social standpoint, students understand themselves better when they understand others, and oftentimes this exploration of self and others is done with the usage of technologies. Unfortunately, the developers of technology often create these devices that can operate as extended minds in isolation without the consultation of the user, be it student or teacher, and these algorithms and constraints in technology can have ethical implications. In sum, three major themes are found within the field of educational neuroscience, and they include the following. One, neuroscience findings applied to the classroom. Two, interdisciplinary collaboration, psychology, education, and neuroscience. And three, an integration of technical languages between education and neuroscience. In educational neuroscience, assessment and intervention must consider the role of algorithms in deciding when and how to intervene in a student's cognitive processes in an effort to ensure autonomy and privacy are maintained. When considering how technologies can extend a student's mind, there are two approaches that are used. One approach is the parity principle, and this involves the notion that if a process that happens in a classroom would readily be classified as a part of a cognitive toolkit when it goes into a student's head, then it is, at least for that point in time, part of the cognitive processes. Functional parity is the second approach and involves the idea that technologies complement existing brain functions instead of replicating what the brain already does. In other words, integration is important, and there are varying degrees of integration based on information flow, one way, two-way, reciprocal, accessibility, trust, procedural transparency. This deals with the ease of usage after each practice. Informational transparency. This deals with ease in which information can be interpreted. Is it opaque or clear? And personalization. The dimensions that I just listed represent a spectrum in which embedded and extended cognitive systems can exist. Paul Smart applied the idea of extended cognitive processes to the specific socio-technical context of the web because it can be a mechanism that realizes human mental states and processes. Students are able to store their memories using technologies, they're able to retrieve information, compute information, and they are no longer constrained by wires. All they need is a decent router in their classrooms. And these advances create opportunities to understand the nature of students' cognitive and epistemic abilities. All technologies are not necessarily a student's extended mind. It's important to consider whether there is a consistent and frequent interaction between the brain and algorithm in which a student perceives the algorithm as a real extension of their mind. I will use a general example here to discuss extended mind, but it should be noted that this is not directly applicable to the student learning context. Here we go. For example, if one uses a GPS application to get to Starbucks in the city they just moved to, then the GPS at that point in time may not be an extended mind, but rather more of an assistant. However, if over time the person continuously routes to Starbucks using the GPS and quite frequently trusts the directions he or she is given because the environment in the app is much more familiar, and she forms a mental representation of the application in mind, then it's safe to proffer that the GPS indeed is an extension of the mind. Neuroethics consider the ethical implications of the brain's interfacing with technologies. Given that students may use applications to complete school assignments, and these applications are designed by companies that may have business partnerships and interest in understanding and manipulating student information, a host of ethical issues arise. Rayner and Nagel identified three particular issues that have import for discussion, and they include the following. Number one, threats to autonomy from manipulations of technologies of an extended mind. Number two, threats to privacy by examinations of technologies of an extended mind. And number three, cognitive enhancements via technologies extending a person's mind. Rayner and Nagel went on to describe three features of algorithms that could impact the degree to which influences are considered to be autonomy violations. Number one, the algorithm's persuasiveness and decision making. Number two, the gravity of the decision. And number three, the algorithm's ability to identify the student's preferences. A student's autonomy could be violated or may not be violated if a student is able to reflect on their decision and not necessarily take what the app is saying or encouraging them to do at face value. In other words, if the app primarily functions as an assistant and the student is able to reflect on their decision, then there is less likelihood of an autonomy violation. As a student continues to interact with the technology, and if the technology is not something that just runs pre-programmed directives, then the possibility of the application unduly influencing decisions in everyday life is greater. Now, of course, the lesser the presumed possible harm or benefits, the lower the apparent seriousness of the decision. If the algorithm in the application has the ability to log a student's preferences and track behavior, then there could be a violation of privacy and autonomy if the corporate entity is in partnership with vendors and stores to influence one's decision making. It's important to educate students on how to use technology in the best possible way and to make them aware that their extended minds may be accessed by others. Some educators believe that it is important to educate students about this in primary, secondary, and university curricula.